Hi everyone, so this is an Abloy Sentry, and what I have here is a bit of a generation of different picks and handles that I've made for it to be able to get this open. So this is what I have now. This is my third generation, but starting from here, this was my first attempt at making a front tension handle for a disc detainer lock. It had a gauge on it as well, but I had made it flush here, so it immediately snapped off when I was trying to take off the supports. But I also saw that this was way smaller than I had thought, and I didn't think this looked very comfortable to tension the lock with, and it was quite small to hold on to. So then I had my idea for my second generation of them, and I didn't really get to try out the first one, so I didn't have much to go off of, but I went with wider and longer fins to be able to tension from, but I still had them squared off, so these ended up being kind of sharp coming off the printer, and I didn't file them down or anything like that, and so I ended up putting tape on it because it just got uncomfortable after a while of pressing my hand into that to hold the tension on. It did work decently. I did manage to pick the lock with it. What I had here was markings for the depths of the different discs, and then the rotation amount for each different cut in the min and max range, so that I could understand what the feedback was that I was getting. This was the turning tool that I had made for it. My thought for it was that if I had put a big disc on top, it would have been more comfortable to hold. I would be getting clear feedback and a bit more leverage on it. It didn't end up being very comfortable to work with, so most of the time I ended up actually just picking with it down here. Another thing that you might be able to see, this inner edge here is concave to match the edge that sits here. I thought those being flush would make the most sense. It turns out that all that did was make it a little bit harder to read what the depth was on my cuts as I was moving up and down. So on the next generation, I got rid of that as well. So that led me to this third one that I've made, and I've only used this once, but I do like it compared to the previous two still. I did do the depth markings on it as well. These are a bit less accurate than my old one because I didn't take as much time to do it. But what I did was, first, the older ones had a rounding inward here, and I reversed that, so this sits a little bit wider and more flush against the lock, so it's easier to keep that steady. I made this much longer, and these are all rounded now, so this is nice and smooth to press against. Here, this is no longer concave and actually sits out against it, so it's a lot easier to read where the depth is sitting at from any angle. And I made this tension handle skinny with some knobs just for smooth control over it. I also made the inner diameter of the gauge to hold the tensioning tip smaller. I did end up having to drill it out a bit because I didn't get the printer just right on the settings, so it was a little too thin. That was actually really annoying and took a long time to fix, so I don't know that I do that again. My thought was that it would give me more stability with the picking tip as I was picking. I don't really know that it was worth it. If I were to make a fourth generation, which I probably will for other front tensioning locks, I think one thing that I would do, I would make this handle longer and easy, like maybe a little bit, just the whole thing maybe a little bit thicker to hold on to, and then keep these screws just part of the way down and maybe bury them inset at some point or get some set screws for it. This is the materials. So this is the ejector pin that the picking tip is cut from. It's a 1.5 millimeter. So yeah, you can see that we can't go much further than this handle size here if we were to go larger to be able to get the depth of the lock here. This is what we end up cutting the tip into. So this is specifically for the Sentry. It could probably open a handful of other front tensioning locks, but it's in that Y shape to fit through the warding on the discs that you can see compared to the key. Just enough to grab the inner notches of those. And this front tension is just cut from a long piece of stainless steel tube, and I've measured it to tension only the very first disc. I could slide it out a bit more into a tension 1 and 2 on a lock that requires that, but yeah, that's what we've got so far. So I'll get this up in a vise, and then we'll pick this and then try and gut this. Okay, so we got this up in a vise, just so that you can get a better angle of the picking tip as I'm working through it. So you can see the key works. Yeah, I backed the camera out a bit. So we'll start with getting the tensioner on, and then at 0 tension, I'm gonna put the picking tip all the way down to the bottom, put the tension on, and then start on that anti-wear disc at the bottom. So typically these are set to max, so it's kind of a freebie. It's also got a wider, I don't know what the part is called, but the part that catches to stop it from over rotating, it's a bit wider, so it won't sit at the same position as the other maxes. All right, and then we're gonna come up to 11. And from what I've been told, in most locks, these bottom 2 are both max gates. Sometimes this requires a bit of counter rotation to put them into the gates. It's very tight all the way through. So no gates there. I'll pop back down, pick it up on the back, slipped off. That sounded nice and chunky. See if we can do the same with 11. Okay, well, let's just hope those are set for now. We'll keep moving up. So 9, quite a bit of movement there, so I'm just gonna leave that. I wasn't as precise when marking out these neutral positions and disc heights, so it takes me a little bit longer to get on the discs on this pick than my previous one, but I'll probably make another iteration of handles that are a little bit more comfy. I think one thing I want to do is raise this up a little bit on the top or bottom, just to not have it be as flat when pushing off of it, so it's a bit more comfortable picking in hand versus in vise. Anyways, back to 8. Reduce the tension a little bit. There, it's nice and loose at the 3rd position. Seven. Same for 7. 6. That's good in position 2 there. 5. Slipped off of it. I like that. That's good in position 3. So yeah, one thing you keep seeing is I keep rotating this as I'm applying the pressure, and it's just because the grip is a little bit awkward. So if I could have a slightly better way to hold it, I'd be pretty happy about this. 4. position 2, but it's pretty wide. We'll just leave that for now. We'll come back to that. 3, very tight. Reduce the tension a little bit. There, that's good in position 3. And 2. As far as I know, these second discs tend to be max, but maybe that's not true. So I'm in position 3 there, still very tight, so drop down, pop back up, reduce the tension a little bit, push that over. All right, we're not open yet, so we'll come back down to 4 again, if we can get there. I don't think we're open. No. It will be obvious when we are. There we go. Okay. So 4 is binding very hard now. So let's get underneath that. And just a little bit of counter rotation. I think it's stuck in position 2 in a false gate, so I think I need to reduce a bit of tension. There we go. Let's open. Let's get our pick out of there. And I'll adjust the camera again for the gut here and get the face out of there. Just come back down a bit. Okay, so I want this, and I want this. So first thing, I have to remove this set screw that holds the core in. So that just sits in here holding this in place. The key actually fits right on top here, and you can use that to remove this. And so you can see with these 330s, that's where that screw sits in holding this in place, so it can't be unscrewed. Ugh, this one's very greasy. Just got a washer here, just take that out. Here we can see all of the internals. I'll see if I can pull this out without losing anything. There's the first disc fell off, and the first spacer. It's got a spring on the bottom, so it's not going to want to sit. I'll just hold on to that. There's the inside. It's just got a groove there for the sidebar, and then everything at the bottom is the same as pretty much every other lock that works like this. Just a couple of bearings that hold the shackle in. So there's our sidebar. And I'm going to take this out early. So this the DSS bar that rotates the discs from the inside. And that is what prevents a lot of our rotation, causing us to have to go back underneath and re-pick up discs on the backside of that pick. Try and take this apart as neat as I can, but like I said, it's quite greasy, so a lot of things kind of stick together in here. There's a spacer. Not too worried about the order of the spacers. Four and a spacer. Come on. Okay, we'll just take that. There's 5 and a spacer. 6. Spacer. 7. Spacer. 8. Spacer. Come on. There we go. 9. Spacer. Just gonna grab these 3 together. And put this down. So we got the anti-wear disc. There's no gap there with the spacer. Then we've got, don't want to put that upside down, 11, spacer, bit of debris, and 10. So if we can focus here, oh, we can, nice. These are the true gates. The false gates are pretty shallow, and so it looks like they would be pretty different, but when the bar isn't dropped down, you don't feel it as much. So really all you're feeling, I'll get something a bit sharper here, is the difference in gap between this false gate here versus the true gate there. And the false gate will grind up against the bottom here, whereas the true gate will sit just a little bit into there. So you feel a difference. Some of the true gates are larger than others, but they all feel pretty similar when they're in the lock. And then if we want to just quickly try and look at this, we can see the 2 ways that this picks up. So this sits right onto here, if we can see that, and that can rotate the disc. Ugh. Come on. Okay, let's try one further back so you can see it a bit better. Or you know what, these are upside down compared to the pick orientation. That's why. When they're in the lock, they face this way. And you can see also this second to last disc is the profile disc here, so it has extra notches in it. And these square corners are a bit more square than these ones. So you've kind of got 3 different inner diameters here that you have to work with. So when I originally cut this tool, I had cut it to fit these generic ones, and those fit nicely, and those can turn, and then yeah, it picks up like that and then turns it with the back pieces, but it was too big to fit onto these 2, so I had to reshape it specifically to fit on these back ones here. And I was nervous about that because I didn't know if it was gonna not fit those other ones, but it works out just fine. So there we go. That is the Abloy Sentry. Yeah, hopefully I'll have some more Abloys to work through soon. Thank you.